Periodically, fighters just can't keep it together. They're spirited, intense, and from their intense words and actions to their heated exchanges and outbursts, there are times when fighters went way too far in press conferences. I'm talking about moments that left us all in shock. Think about it from a fighter's perspective. You're up on stage, surrounded by flashing lights, cameras, and microphones. With all the eyes of the world upon you, the pressure is immense, and sometimes things can get out of hand. But let's be honest, who doesn't love a good fight? Especially when it's not in the ring or cage. Do you remember that MMA fighter who knocked out his opponent cold at a pre-fight press conference? It was a scene straight out of a movie. The unnamed MMA fighter, located in Russia, was clearly ready to rumble, even before the actual fight. During a pre-fight press conference, he and his opponent were answering questions, when abruptly and without warning, the unnamed Russian bare-knuckle fighter unleashed a brutal right hook. That sent his opponent, Javid Zayev, crashing to the ground. The room was in chaos, as people rushed to the fallen fighter's aid, while the unknown Russian fighter stood there looking like the saddest man on the planet. It was an electrifying moment that had everyone talking for days. I mean, come on, who does that? The brother clearly had no qualms about showing off his power and sending a message to his opponent. But it was a risky move that could have cost him big time. The fight was called off, and the Russian faced a lengthy suspension. Still, it was a moment that left everyone talking. And it just goes to show how intense and chaotic press conferences can get. Imagine you're at a press conference for a UFC fight, and the tension is palpable. The two fighters are glaring at each other. The media is hanging on their every word, and fans are cheering and jeering. It's electric, it's intense, and then, suddenly, all hell breaks loose. That's precisely what happened at the UFC 279 press conference between Nate Diaz and Khamzat Chimaev. The two fighters were mouthing off back and forth, trading insults, when things took a violent turn. Chimaev, the brash and confident up-and-comer, got up into Diaz's face, and the two started shoving each other. Suddenly, the room erupted into chaos, as security guards and Dana White tried to intervene, and that's when shit popped off. It was a wild scene, reporters ducking for cover, fans jumping out of their seats. In the end, the press conference was abandoned, and the two fighters had to be separated. It's moments like these that show us just how intense and unpredictable press conferences can be in the fight game. These guys may be the best of the best in the ring, but when it comes to press conferences, all bets are off. Sometimes, two people just don't get along. That's what happened at the UFC 229 press conference between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor. It was a fiery affair from the get-go, with insults being thrown left and right. The tension was palpable, and it was clear that these guys hated each other. The two fighters wouldn't let the other have the last word. Khabib took things to a whole new level, jumped out of the press conference stage, and tried to attack McGregor's team. It was chaos, with security guards scrambling to contain the situation. I mean, come on, man. You're at a press conference, not a street fight. But these two fighters just couldn't control their emotions. The result was a wild, unforgettable moment that will go down in press conference history. Remember UFC 137? It was a press conference to announce the bout between Nick Diaz and Georges St. Pierre. But there was one problem. Nick didn't show up. Diaz was scheduled to face off against GSP for the welterweight championship, but instead of being at the press conference, he was reportedly lost in Las Vegas. Fans were in disbelief, and UFC President Dana White was not happy. He called Nick's behavior unprofessional and disrespectful. But Diaz's no-show only added fuel to an already intense fire, and the anticipation for the fight only grew. Nick Diaz is never one to shy away from controversy. He's the king of press conference mayhem. But wait, there's more. Another heated moment took place between Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor at UFC 202. These two fierce fighters weren't afraid to let their emotions show during the pre-fight presser.
Look, I'm just happy to be here. I'm ready to fight. That's all I know.
It all started with a bit of trash talk, but then quickly escalated to something much more intense. Suddenly, bottles and cans were flying across the room as the two fighters clashed in a heated exchange. The chaos forced the event to come to an abrupt end, leaving fans stunned and security on high alert. It was a moment that will forever go down in UFC history as one of the most intense and unforgettable press conference brawls. Nate Diaz and Conor McGregor may have their differences, but one thing is certain: they bring the heat when it comes to pre-fight press conferences. Speaking of heated press conferences, we have to talk about Khabib versus Ferguson. Khabib had faced his fair share of trash talk from opponents, but it was Tony Ferguson who managed to get under his skin. El Kukui aimed shots at Khabib's weight-cutting difficulties, calling him fat. Khabib didn't take it lying down and fired back with a verbal attack of his own, calling Ferguson an old man and claiming he'd dominate him in a street fight. The stare-down was intense, with Khabib even kicking away Ferguson's interim lightweight belt in a rare display of emotion. Unfortunately, the highly anticipated fight never happened. Fighters often go way too far in press conferences, like the time Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier had one of the most intense and heated exchanges in MMA history. It was at the UFC 178 press conference back in 2014, and things escalated quickly. Jones took a shot at Cormier, and before you knew it, the two were face to face and shoving each other. It was chaotic and really intense, like a car accident you just can't look away from. And let's be honest, a press conference is meant to promote a fight, but these two took it to a whole other level. The tension between them was palpable, and it just added to an already high anticipation of their fight. However, as we all know, it's not just what happens during the press conference that matters. It's what transpires in the octagon that truly counts in the end. Jon Jones and Daniel Cormier delivered a classic fight that will indeed go down in MMA history. We hope you enjoyed reliving some of the wildest moments in press conference history, from astonishing knockouts to heated exchanges. It's clear when it comes to the world of MMA, anything can happen. But at the end of the day, these points are what make the sport so compelling. They add an extra layer of tension, drama, and unpredictability that keeps us all on the edge of our seats. Let's raise a glass to these fighters who give it their all, both in and outside the ring. Who knows what they'll do next? Until then, stay tuned for more exhilarating content. And remember, anything can transpire in the world of MMA. There you have it, fight fans. These are the times when fighters went way too far in press conferences.